My name is Christina. Standing in the driveway of my smoke-filled home, watching the embers fall like black snow, I'm flooded with a mix of anger and relief. Anger at my in-laws, who were trying to sell our emergency supplies right in the face of a wildfire, and relief that we managed to get out alive. It all started a few days ago. My wife, Emily, and I had always been big on emergency preparedness. We lived in a fire-prone area, and we'd seen the news of wildfires sweeping through neighborhoods. So, we drilled regularly and stocked our garage with all the necessary supplies: water, food, medical kits, important documents, and camping gear. It was 3 a.m. when the evacuation alert blared through our phones. Level 3, go now, it said. The Riverside fire had jumped the containment line and was racing towards our neighborhood at an alarming speed. Emily quickly grabbed the go bags, and I shouted to her as I threw on clothes, "I'll get the dogs." We'd practiced this dozens of times, and everything was already packed and organized. Within 15 minutes, we were on the road. Our SUV was loaded, and our dogs were safe in the back. Looking in the rear-view mirror, I saw the sky glowing orange. "Thank God we're prepared," Emily said, checking our list on her phone. "The shelter's going to be chaos." She was right. When we reached the Red Cross evacuation center, it was overwhelmed. There were hundreds of families with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Children were crying, and elderly people were without their medications. It was a heartbreaking sight. Since we had our own supplies, we set up in a corner and started sharing what we could with the families around us. That's when Emily's phone rang. It was her mother, Margaret. I told her to put it on speaker. I could hear Margaret's shrill voice from across the car. "Emily, we just saw the news. Are you safe?" "We're fine, Mom." At the evacuation center, Emily replied. "Oh, thank goodness. Your father and I were so worried." "We're at your house now," Margaret said. Emily and I exchanged shocked looks. "Why are you at our house?" I asked. "Well, to help, of course. We have your spare key, remember? We came to rescue anything valuable before the fire gets there," Margaret explained. My blood ran cold. "Margaret, get out of there. It's an evacuation zone." "Oh, Christina's just being paranoid as usual," she laughed. "We have plenty of time. The fire's still miles away. Although I have to say, your garage is concerning." "Concerning?" "All this is our emergency supplies," I said through gritted teeth. "Emergency supplies?" "Normal people have a first aid kit and some bottled water. You have an entire store in here." "This is mental illness," Margaret scoffed. "Don't worry, we're taking care of it. Your father found someone on Craigslist who buys this sort of thing. They're on their way with a truck." "What? You're selling it?" I was furious. "You'll thank us later. The money can go toward therapy for Christina's paranoia issues," Margaret said. Emily grabbed the phone. "Mom, do not touch our supplies. We need those. Sweetheart, you need help. This prepping obsession has poisoned Christina's mind and now yours. We're doing this for your own good. The state is on fire, and you're in an evacuation center. You don't need supplies hoarded in a garage. You're safe now. Let us handle this," Margaret said and hung up. I immediately ran to the car, and Emily followed. We left our carefully organized camp spot. The drive home, which should have taken 30 minutes, took 3 hours because of the evacuation traffic going in the opposite direction. At the neighborhood checkpoint, the police tried to stop us. "Sir, this is an evacuation zone. You need to turn around." "My in-laws are at my house, and they're refusing to leave," I explained. The officer sighed. "We've got about 20 of those today. Make it quick. The fire's moving fast." When we got home, we found my father-in-law, Henry, loading our water supply into a stranger's pickup truck. 25 cases of water were already gone, and our food buckets were missing. Medical supplies, camping gear, emergency radio, and solar panels were all being loaded by two men I'd never seen before. "Stop!" I roared. Margaret came out of the garage carrying our emergency documents binder. "Oh, you're back. Good. We found your cash stash, too." "Really, Christina, keeping money in the house is just asking to be robbed." "You're robbing us right now," I said angrily. "We're helping you," Henry said calmly, handing a box of MREs to the stranger. "This hoarding behavior isn't normal." "Margaret's right. You need professional help. Those supplies are for emergencies, like the wildfire currently heading toward us," I argued. "There are shelters. The government takes care of people. That's what taxes are for," Margaret dismissed. The stranger, a wiry man with cash in his hand, spoke up. "Look, they called me, said they had supplies to sell. We made a deal. $1,500 for the lot." $1,500? There's $20,000 worth of supplies here. I felt sick. "Not my problem." "They said they owned it," the stranger replied. Emily stepped forward. "They don't. This is theft. Leave now, or I'm calling the police." "With what cops?" "They're all managing the evacuation," the buyer laughed. But Henry was looking nervous now. The sky was getting darker, and the smell of smoke was stronger. "Margaret, maybe we should go." "Not until we finish helping our daughter." "This is an intervention," Margaret said firmly. That's when the second evacuation siren went off. It was not the steady tone of a warning but the pulsing wail of immediate danger. The stranger's partner dropped the box he was holding. "Screw this." The fire jumped Highway 20. "We're out of here." They peeled out, leaving half our supplies in the driveway. Henry was already heading for their car. "We need to go. Now." Margaret was still lecturing. "This is exactly why prepping is mental illness. You create fear, paranoia." "Mom. Look." Emily screamed. Over the tree-line, we could see actual flames, treetop high, maybe a mile away. Margaret's face went white. "Oh my God. Get in your car and go, now," I ordered. They scrambled for their Prius. Henry turned the key. Nothing. He tried again, but the engine wouldn't start. "It was fine an hour ago," he yelled. "When was the last time you got gas?" Emily asked. "We were going to fill up after," they said. They were out of gas in an evacuation zone with a wildfire bearing down. "Get in our car," I said. No matter how angry I was, I couldn't leave them to burn. We threw what supplies we could save into the SUV, the water jugs the strangers had dropped, a few food buckets, and one medical kit. Maybe 5% of what we'd prepared. Margaret and Henry squeezed into the back with the dogs. The drive out was terrifying. The fire was moving faster than the evacuation. Embers were falling like snow, and trees were exploding from the heat. Margaret was crying, clutching Henry's arm. "I don't understand. The shelter will help us, right?" "They have to help us." "With what? The thousands of other evacuees? The limited resources? The overwhelmed volunteers?" I snapped. "But the government. The government tells you to have emergency supplies. FEMA literally has a website about it." "You just sold ours to strangers," I added. We made it to the evacuation center as the fire reached our neighborhood. Later, I learned that our house survived barely, but 3 houses on our street didn't. The shelter was beyond capacity. There were no cots left, no blankets. The Red Cross was doing their best, but they were overwhelmed. After 4 hours, Margaret whimpered, "I'm hungry." The shelter had run out of food an hour ago, and new supplies were coming soon. I opened one of the salvaged buckets, the emergency rations I'd packed. I handed her and Henry each a meal. "This is from our supplies, the ones you tried to sell," I said quietly. Henry at least had the grace to look ashamed. Margaret just ate in silence. We spent 3 days in that shelter. We watched unprepared families struggle, and Margaret and Henry depended entirely on the few supplies we'd saved and the kindness of strangers. On the second day, there was a second evacuation. The fire had shifted and was threatening the shelter. We had to move to another town. "How will we get there?" Margaret asked, panicked. "We don't have gas money." "We don't have our car," Henry said. "We have our emergency cash," Emily said coldly. "The stash you mocked Christina for keeping." The second shelter was even worse. It was less organized and had fewer resources. Margaret spent hours in line for a thin blanket. Henry's blood pressure medication ran out, something our sold supplies had included extras of. "Please," Margaret finally begged on the third day. "Do you have any more food?" They said the truck might not come until tomorrow. I gave her another meal from our bucket. She cried as she ate it. "I'm sorry. I didn't understand." "No. You decided you knew better. You decided our preparations were crazy without ever asking why we prepared. You sold our safety net because it didn't match your worldview," I said. When we finally returned home, the neighborhood was a patchwork of survival and loss. Our house stood smoky but intact. Margaret and Henry's car had melted tires from the heat but hadn't burned. They stayed with us for 2 weeks while they figured out their next steps. They depended on the very supplies they'd tried to eliminate. I restocked what I could, but supply chains were disrupted and stores were empty. What Margaret had sold for $1,500 would have cost $5,000 to replace, if it could be replaced at all. "We'll pay you back," Henry promised. "With what?" "You gave our supplies to strangers for pennies on the dollar." "You can't buy back peace of mind," Emily said. After the evacuation, Margaret was different. She was quiet and thoughtful. She watched me reorganize our supplies with something like respect. "Why do you do it?" "The preparing?" "Because I've seen what happens when systems fail. Because I love my family too much to leave their safety to chance. Because having supplies means we can help others, not just ourselves," I said. "We could have died. If you hadn't come back. If you hadn't had gas. If you hadn't shared your food," she said quietly. "Yes. You could have," I agreed. They paid us back eventually, not with money, but Margaret became one of the strongest advocates for emergency preparedness in her retirement community. She shared her story, her mistakes, and her near disaster. "My daughter-in-law isn't crazy. She's caring. And I nearly killed myself with my arrogance," she'd tell people. Henry took classes from CERT and volunteered at disaster preparedness events. He'd show people pictures from the evacuation and explain how our paranoid preparations had saved 4 lives. But Emily never fully forgave them. They didn't just sell our supplies. They sold our trust. They proved that their judgment mattered more than our safety, she told me one night. She was right. You can replace water and food, but you can't replace the knowledge that family will sabotage you during your most vulnerable moments. I still prepare. I still stock supplies and plan for emergencies. But now I use a storage unit across town. The in-laws don't have that key. Because the next wildfire is coming, the next earthquake, the next flood. And when it does, Margaret and Henry know exactly where they're not going for help. Not because I'm cruel, but because they taught me the most valuable lesson in emergency preparedness. The biggest disaster isn't the fire. It's the people who'd rather see you burn than admit you were right to prepare for the flames.